YouTube Mazik, go in there. Godows is back, rating 11 NFL trades that recently happened. We had that big draft trade that happened this morning. The Keenan Allen trade happened last night. We'll talk about those, grade those, and other ones that I didn't get the chance to talk about in videos yet, kind of revisiting some of them as well. More trades could happen. L'Jarius Sneed, possibly Hassan Reddick, others. If and when those happen, we can talk about them. Follow us on Twitter for instant news and takes. We have a bunch of videos on the channel grading signings, possibly more of those to come. We have a spreadsheet keeping track of the signings and my grades. Links pinned in the comments for that. Anything else you're looking for. Go more of the recent ones first. Texans have 3 trades in this video. 2 I do not like. 1 I do really like for them. Thinking this morning and early afternoon, like how this makes sense or what the Texans' angle is with this one, and I can't really figure it out. This is one of those ones where if I would have had this in a mock or said this could happen, everybody would be like, "What are you talking about?" No, especially Texans fans like, "No, we don't have our first round pick anymore. We don't have one at all. We don't gain a pick." That's an issue for this too. Like they don't have a first round pick at all now. They don't gain a pick this year for giving up their 23rd overall pick. Yes, they gain a second next year. By this time next year, it could be going, okay, we got a second round pick. It could be a decent second round pick from the Vikings, next year. But man, you do not pick in the first round. Good thing about first round picks is, the most valuable players in the draft are up there. The best players in the draft are up there. But that 5th year option on the contract of only first round picks as well makes it a little more appealing. I just don't really see the Texans' angle here. The 6th and 7th it benefits the Texans. Such a small part of this, but you're swapping a major swap, don't have a first round pick, and you gain a second next year. I think they kind of botched, and we'll talk about that a little bit more, their interior defensive line approach so far this offseason. And I don't think Byron Murphy's going to be on the board at 23, but if he is, this is going to look even worse for the Texans because that would have been perfect. I'm going to be going like, oh my God, they should have kept that pick. But could have got a guy like Jerzon Newton up there. Fisk, they possibly can get Fisk in the second round, but they also need a corner still. And, the corners at the end of the first round or round 23 are a lot better than what's going to be in the second round. So I'm just not really getting this. The only approach that could make sense, maybe they just want more players, but they're actually not. They're only gaining 1 pick, and it's next year. So who knows what they're going to want next year. The fact that they're not picking in the first round, they don't gain a first from this. They don't even gain a pick this year. It's just a little confusing from the Texans. For the Vikings, this makes sense. I think they get good value here. They get another first round pick at 23. There's a 5th year option on a contract with first round pick. If they decide to use 2 first round picks, they now have better ammo to move up, so that helps their situation. We're not going to factor in the trade if they do move up or not, but because that's like a different scenario, a different situation. But it does help them to whatever their mission is, and that's kind of like proof's kind of in the pudding there on who got the better value, because what most people do believe is that they did this to get better picks to be able to trade up. So that would mean another team likes this right up here with the Vikings better than that over, I'm cut off, but with the Texans. So another team likes that better than, so they think the Vikings got more value. So I think other teams believe that as well. Just a little confused about the Texans here. I thought, forget the 6th and 7th swap, do away with that. Everything else the same, but the Texans gain a 4th, maybe a 5th round pick. Then I like it for the Texans. Then we're talking maybe. So that's where we're off on this one. So Vikings get good value. They get ammo if they want to trade up. They get good ammo if they want to stay put. I floated this idea out there. What if they just did trade up for their quarterback? I think it's unlikely. But what if they trade up to 23 to get a Bo Nix or Michael Penix? That around the range they should go, and then get a 5th year option on their contract, because that's huge with quarterbacks. It's a possibility, but I'd say more likely they're looking to trade up for a top tier quarterback in the draft. But just a lot of ways this makes sense for the Vikings. That's really good value. So, it's definitely an interesting one that I was not expecting, especially this early. So over a month till the draft. A big one that happened last night. The Bears acquired Keenan Allen for a 4th round pick. This is a weird one. I said it on Twitter. This is surprising on multiple levels for both teams. Doesn't mean it's good in a good or bad way. I'm not really saying when I say big time, like surprising. I don't necessarily I'm not necessarily in love with either of this for either team. As you can tell by the C. B- is typically a good grade for the Bears, for anybody. But yeah, again, surprising on multiple levels. For the Chargers, it's surprising because they were supposed to possibly move on from Mac, Bosa, and Mike Williams and keep Keenan Allen. Like, teams were calling about all four, but they were hesitant on Keenan Allen. They want to keep them. They did the opposite. They keep the other three. They move on from Keenan Allen. So that was a bit surprising. Then for the Bears, their whole thing these last couple of years and even this year is get young guys. We hear polls talk. It's always about young, athletic, build through the draft. Let's continue to build through the draft. Yet he's continuing to give up more and more picks. So it's a little contradicting, because of that a little bit. It's not a big negative, not a huge negative in this trade, I suppose. But who do I start with? I guess the Bears, a game of B-. Overall, bottom line is you get a good receiver. Very good. We're still very good. Maybe he's really right around the same talent he's always been, to be honest. He does have some durability concerns. How will he be away from Justin Herbert? I guess those are the questions, but and there's more questions that we'll get into. But at the end of the day, you get a really solid receiver, really good receiver for a fourth-round pick. Now, Keenan Allen's talent is better than a fourth-round pick, but what his value is right now, this was about right. This was about right because he's 31 going on 32 before this season. Deal is expiring. You're going to have to possibly give him an extension. So that was the reason, and the Chargers needed to clear some space, I suppose. So that's why his value is right around a fourth-round pick. But I don't know if this really necessarily fits what the Bears are trying to do. Like an older player. Do they? That's what I don't love. They traded another pick away. They're very limited on picks. Do they extend him? It's a little risky, too, to extend him because is he going to be healthy this year? What's he worth at his age? He doesn't have Justin Herbert, so is he going to play as well if he has Caleb Williams? Again, no matter who he has, he's going to play pretty well, I think. So there are some questions. What do they do? Yeah, again, do they extend him? Where do they value him at? I kind of just said that, but people are talking about they could get this fourth-round pick back in terms of compensatory. That wouldn't be till a 2026 pick, and it'll probably depend on if he stays healthy this year. Because what kind of contract does he get with the new team, and then there's a cancellation process, so it's a little tough to tell. With that. So. Interesting one here. Overall, the Bears got a good player for a fourth-round pick, and it's going to help them pairing him with DJ Moore. So that keeps it in the good grade range. But, getting an older guy, very limited on picks, even more limited on picks now. Tough decision on if it's a rental or an extension, depending on the price. You probably want to see if he could stay healthy and how he works with this young group this year, or how he is away from Herbert. So those things kind of weigh it down a little bit. Mainly the lack of picks. I'd say if you're one of the a lot of talk this offseason, what the Bears are going to do with the first pick, or what the Bears fans want them to do. There's a chunk of the Bears fan base that really want them to roll with Fields and specifically go with the receiver with that first pick, or even better, trade back a little bit to 2 or 3 or whatever and take Marvin Harrison Jr., one of those receivers. I would imagine those people don't like this trade because them getting Keenan Allen while having limited picks is kind of being like, okay, we're going to check that off the list. We got a receiver. We're not going to take one. Or even if you wanted one at 9, there was a possibility to get one of those receivers at 9. I think they kind of said we have no shot at getting one at 9. We better add a receiver. So that pretty much says, all right, they checked it off the list. And they could still add one because, he's on an expiring deal. But then somebody's sitting. Waldron uses a lot of the tight ends. They brought in Everett on top of Komet. So if they drafted one of those elite receivers, somebody's getting a very limited amount of snaps for how good they are. So this pretty much says, check the receiver off the list. We're done with that in the first round. We have limited picks. We got to focus on other things. So, I would imagine those people do not they're probably grading this poorly because they really wanted one of those receivers. So, unless they're changing their mind all of a sudden, which is possible. But the Chargers, I gave them a C. I was originally going to grade it lower, a little lower maybe, but they did clear a lot of space. They have a lot of holes in their team. They aren't able to sign a lot of guys recently. So they add more draft picks in there, and they clear a lot of space so they can do a little bit more damage. My problem is, and again, I don't really have a problem with the value. Keenan Allen's talent, he's worth more than a fourth. But given the actual current value, all the factors, $23 million cap hit for the Chargers, expiring deal, again, desperate for some space maybe. That's what he was worth. So I'm not really hammering them on the value that they got back, but I would rather have Keenan Allen if I'm the Chargers here. My issue with the clearing the space is you cleared space, you actually can do some damage now. I'm not going to sit here and say free agency is over, but a lot of the key guys are gone. You didn't just clear space to be able to do a little bit of here and there. You cleared extra space. This wasn't 100% necessary. They could have kept them and then just done minor signings in free agencies. And we're in free agency. We're kind of at that point where it's kind of the 1 year prove it deals. Guys are taking cheaper to go play with good quarterbacks, good coaches. So you didn't necessarily have to trade Keenan Allen. They kind of acted like they did. So for me, they have $28 million in cap space with this. That's actually one of the more rich teams right now because other teams spent a bit. So to me, you go out there and you pretty much have to make big moves now, and you have to spend money. Otherwise, this is kind of pointless. It's not like they freed for the future because you've done an expiring deal. So if they don't go out there and make some signings and spend some money, it's a little contradicting here as well. And what else could you really do at this point? There's not a whole, so it's a little weird, but yeah, they're going to need, they have a bunch of picks now. They cleared a lot of space. So that kind of in an expiring deal, were they going to get them back? I would have preferred trade. I'm making sure another trade didn't happen. Nothing happened there. I would have, they got rid of both receivers and kept both pass rushers. I would have preferred 1-1. I would actually preferred, because Khalil Mack, if you move on from him, I know he had a really good year, but $23 million you free. Bosa's only $14 million. Mack has big time durability. They all do, but Bosa's younger, more upside. More to free with Mack. I would have moved on from Mack, and then I think they did the right thing with Mike Williams if you have to, and kept Keenan Allen for a year. Turn that into a compensatory pick next year, hopefully, and kept Bosa as well. So I would have done it a little differently here. Maybe C's a little generous, but again, they actually have space to do, make more than minor signings. They better go do it, though. They have to go do it. Otherwise, this is contradicting as shit, and they gained a pick. So B- for the Bears, C for the Chargers. A little surprising, and you have some questions for both teams on this, but overall, the Bears get a really good receiver. That's going to be weird. You seeing him in that jersey right there. It's going to be fun, DJ Moore and Keenan Allen. Next, the Sam Howell trade. It's grown on me a little bit for Seattle. I was originally going to grade it a C or a C+. It's grown on me a little bit because they don't actually lose a pick, but this is a pretty valuable pick swap, if we're being honest here. There's a lot of movement here, in this one, but okay, why it's growing on me a little bit. I mean, you get a backup that has upside, and he had starting experience this year. He had some flashes. He does hold the ball too long. A lot of those sacks were on him. He does have some turnover potential, but he's got upside. Again, it's a pretty solid backup, and I prefer the backups that have upside, rather than a guy that's going to retire in a year or whatever. And they badly needed a backup because Geno, he had an injury last year, nothing major, and you don't know what you're going to get from him, especially long term. This could be the last year for Geno, possibly. So Howell could be the starter for the future. Is that 100% like A+ ideal? Maybe not, but factor in where the Seahawks sit in this draft. It's very difficult for them to get a quarterback, difficult for them to trade up, when they have a lot of needs. And next year's quarterback class doesn't look super strong at this early point. So filling that need of getting a backup quarterback and a guy that could potentially help you when you have no other answers for the future, and you don't lose a draft pick. That made me like it a little bit more. But what are the chances Howell is the answer for them long term? Maybe not super high. It's not super, super low, but not super high. And there is a lot of movement there. I mean, you drop, you don't have that third round pick anymore. Instead, you have a fourth round pick. It is a pretty big range because the compensatory picks start to factor in 78 to 102. And the same thing is, I think there's a big difference between third and fourth, the fifth and sixth, even though they're one round away. Big drop off in the fifth and the sixth there. While the Seahawks aren't doing much of anything in free agency, and they cleared a lot of space. It's a little confusing. They cleared a lot of space, got rid of good players so they can do stuff, and they're not doing stuff. So it's a little weird. So that means they need better players. They need more and better players because they're not doing much right now, and they lessen their draft picks for what is essentially a backup quarterback that it's a little unknown if he's going to help them at all or long-term future. So when you put it that way, it's like C, maybe worse, but so you can argue kind of both sides of it. But again, they didn't lose a pick. The swaps are pretty massive, but they didn't lose a pick. They gained somebody that it's a upside backup that could help them, could start for them potentially this year or next year. They kind of filled that need so they kind of can focus on other stuff. So I bumped it up a little bit, B-. And Seattle's typically good with, they made Geno better. They made Drew Lock look better. Looks like they made Russ look better, or just could be he's declining because of his age now. Very well could be that. It is a different staff, though, for Seattle, but they could make Howell look better. I like how he fits with like a DK Metcalf, that type of receiver, because he's going to kind of throw him up for grabs sometimes. He's going to play hero ball. DK is a receiver that, can help you in that situation. So I do like the fit. They got to make sure the offensive line's set, ready to go. They lost some guys there. We'll see. I like this for the Commanders. It's funny because just a couple months ago, there's Commanders fans trying to argue with me. I really wasn't trying to argue back, but because I mentioned like on a week, all right, this is kind of proof. What happened this week is that Howell's not the guy of the future, and they thought that was a ridiculous statement. Like for sure, he's the guy of the future. So here we are, just a couple months later, and it's the fans being proved otherwise here, but. They have the second pick. They should take a quarterback there. I hope they take May for their case. But there's other good quarterbacks there. But they're going to take a guy with that second pick. They have Marcus Mariota. They don't need Howell. They just drafted him in the fifth round a couple years ago, and they don't gain a fifth round pick, but they move into the fifth, with the swap, and they move into the third with the swap. Those are pretty good swaps. They have 5 day 2 picks now because of gaining that third. Remember, the difference between a third and a fourth is one is a day 2 pick, one is a day 3 pick. So for a guy that it was a shot he was going to be their second or third quarterback, no shot he's going to be their first, we don't think. Well, now we know. I think that's pretty good. You help your draft picks, you get better players. They've added some pieces in free agency. Now just go get the better players in the draft, in the third and fifth round rather than the fourth and sixth. So I do like this a lot. They don't gain a pick, I guess, but I like this a lot. It just really helps them here. Some really good value. Those swaps are pretty much equivalent to like gaining a fourth round pick, which is pretty good. Pretty good for Howell. Where he's at right now, and they're in the leverage they don't really have because he's not going to start for them, and they just drafted him in the fifth round. I know it's a different staff, but still, the organization used a fifth round pick on him, so I like that for the Commanders. Give them an A on that one. Random one yesterday, random player for player trade. Cardinals get Ritter. The Falcons get Rondale Moore. As you could tell, I like this for the Falcons more. The Falcons didn't need Ritter. He kind of cost them some games last year. He had some production here and there. Felt like he would work down the field pretty well, and just bad turnovers and bad times, but it was pretty consistent, meaning that's bad consistent, being, with the turnovers in crucial situations. They got Kirk Cousins. They already spent a lot on quarterback. They have Heineke. They can look for the quarterback of the backup quarterback of the future there, for right now, I should say. And they gain another weapon. Their starters are pretty much set. With Drake London, Darnell Mooney, they'll use Kyle Pitts a lot, but adding a key rotation, guys that could play or could start, a guy like Rondale Moore, like a weapon, could help on special teams as well. They have a couple special teamers, in terms of returners already, but I think this only helps them. They didn't need Ritter, so this is, it's an expiring deal, but overall this is pretty solid. So I give them an A. And you see the numbers that are listed on there. That's the cap hit that they're bringing with them. So the Falcons go backwards on cap space here. They lose cap by, do the math, 400 something thousand. So it's not much, but Ritter's under contract next year, and it's for over $1 million. So they actually shed over $1 million next year as well. That's pretty helpful. So I like that for the Falcons. Give it an A. Yeah, for the Cardinals, a little weird. Like, if they didn't badly need a receiver, this would be a better grade. If they had Rondale Moore still, if they had Hollywood Brown still, they still badly need a receiver, but they can solve that at pick 4. And they could still get a receiver at pick 4. Not solving anything. My phone's going off like crazy. What happened? The trade happened. I can pause this, go make the graphic, and I'll be back, and I will throw Kenny Pickett being traded to the Eagles. That is a shocker. Wow. In this video here. That's I knew a trade was going to happen while I was recording this video, but yeah, so the Cardinals got rid of a receiver that can definitely help them. They need a receiver for a guy that's just a backup. Like, you're not hoping, you're not trading for this guy like, okay, this is going to be good value, because good value would be this guy plays for you and plays pretty well. You're hoping Kyler Murray works out, and this is a backup, and he didn't really work out. I mean, decent backup, cheap, whatever. It's just weird how they were really valuing a backup quarterback. I mean, I guess Murray can get hurt, but you badly need receivers here. So that it was a weird one. Player for player, pretty cool to see, but didn't love that for the Cardinals, especially because I think Rondale Moore holds more value than Ritter, especially since the Cardinals need receivers pretty bad. All right, moving on to the next one. We got I don't give out Fs too often. Don't worry, Texans fans. We got the Mixon trade coming up. I graded them very well on that one, but we have kind of 0 for 2 on Texans ones here. This really, really, really felt, it is what it is, actually. The Texans kind of, their plan didn't go the way they wanted it to with their interior defensive line. They were originally going to trade Malik Collins for Arik Armstead. The Niners were actually going to keep Armstead, kind of what the Bengals and Texans did. The Bengals end up, nope, we're going to keep Mixon. We're going to trade him. And then that didn't work. The Texans felt like maybe they can sign him. He ended up going for an insane amount of money. He's very valuable, very good player, but more than expected to the Jaguars, the division rival of the Texans. It was such a good fit with D'Amico Ryans. And they're like, all right, we better go get Sheldon Rankins. They offer him $12 million a year to come back. The Bengals offered $13 million. He goes to the Bengals. So things did not go to plan for the Texans here. And Malik Collins, I think he's getting better. He's been around for a bit, and he's only 28 years old. It feels like he's been around longer than that. I thought he was really solid for them. I thought he was better than Sheldon Rankins. Two good players. I like Collins a bit more, actually. Both good players, but there was games where he's making a massive impact in the middle there, not just stopping the run, but collapsing the pocket, getting pressure. And at $8.47 million this year, $10 million next year, that's pretty solid. So I don't understand this for the Texans. And I guess if their plan worked out, all right, let's shed that space, let's get Armstead, let's get Rankins back. It makes a lot more sense. But then they got to replace, and they got Fedakasi too with that. To me, it's a high-end backup. Maybe Ryans get more out of him. They traded their first-round pick. That's where they can get a replacement, like a good one. So it's a little confusing. I think they kind of botched it. Really, 99% chance. Like they botched what they were trying to do here. It seems to be like proven that they were doing this and then that, and nothing really worked out. So I don't like this one at all. I think Collins is a heck of a football player. I think highly of him. I was thinking higher of him last year than I did any time in the past. Maybe just D'Amico Ryans getting the most out of these guys, but I think he could still can continue to play well in that Niners good defensive line. And the Niners get a guy that I think is worth way more than a 7th round pick. And then sometimes financials are a factor and why teams get a steal. So maybe he's super expensive. No, $8.47 million. That's actually a steal of a deal for him. I think he's worth definitely more than that. So then what could be the other factor? Oh, expiring deal. He's demanding a contract right now. No, he's under contract next year for $10 million. I think he's worth more than that as well. Factor in salary cap, probably going to increase next year. He's going to be worth even more than that unless he tanks this year. So across the board, really good for the Niners. They get a really good player. I think he's going to pair well on that defensive line with Javon Hargrave. They only give up a 7th round pick for a really good player. He's cheaper than he should be this year, and next year they don't have to worry about an extension. If they want to cut him next year, they could free $10 million. I would imagine they keep him, but that's predicting the future. So I love this for the Niners. It makes all the sense in the world. It does not for the Texans, and their plan did not go accordingly. There is what happened. So don't love it, obviously, as you could tell. So for the 2 out of 3 Texans trades that we had so far. But don't worry, Texans fans. Here we go. We'll hop right to the Joe Mixon one. I'm giving them an A+ for this one, and they did give him an extension. And I guess we can sit here and debate the extension. Too long, too much money. I don't know about too much money, but that's besides the point. It's nothing to do with the trade, really. So I am not grading the extension with this trade, nor should we. We shouldn't. But I gave him an A+, and I was actually about to do an A. Well, first off, why is in the A range? Joe Mixon's still a very solid running back. I actually think he'll be better on the Texans than he was in the Bengals. But if he is as good as he was on the Bengals, it's fine. He's a really good back. I like the fit. I like this better for them than, paying Barkley all those guarantees. I like it better. Good fit, good player, only a 7th round pick. That puts it in A range, no question. Everyone should have an A range after that. It was going to stay at an A over an A+ because the Bengals announced like they were cutting him anyway, so the Texans could have had him without giving up a 7th round pick. But so why does it get to an A+? If he's cut, contract is gone. Texans got to negotiate a new contract, and they did do that for an extension for starting next year. Besides the point, he would have got a lot more than $6.1 million for this year. Where the Texans are trying to still make some more moves. So by trading for him, only a 7th round pick, $224 overall, you get him on $6.1 million this year, which is an absolute steal. He's yours. You're free to do whatever, the extension again, besides the point. So that is why it's an easy A+ for the Texans on this one. For the Bengals, I guess the reason it's on an F is because they already said they were going to cut him anyways. So I bump it up a little bit, but why are you going to cut him in the first place? And then you trade him for a 7th, you go, hold on, we're going to trade him. I would imagine his value should be more in this, at least a little bit more in this, because he's only got $6.1 million for this year. That is really cheap. Look at what the other running backs are getting paid, more than that, and he's as good, if not better, not than all of them, but then some of them are as good as some of the other ones, whatever. And a team didn't have to extend him if they got him. The Texans chose to do that. The team could have kept him on $6.1 million. Or extend him 1 year. I don't know. So I don't see how his value wasn't more than that. Again, the only reason it's on an F because they were going to cut him anyways. Why are you going to cut him? Zach Moss cost them $4 million per year. I'm sure he's going to play well for them. $2 million, $6.1 million on the last year's deal. $2.1 million more. Mixon, Moss. I think Mixon's a bit better. Moss, he looked pretty good last year. I'm sure he's going to play all right for the Bengals. Him and Chase Brown, whatever. Mixon's a bit better. So, don't love this for the Bengals. I would have just kept Mixon. They shouldn't really be desperate to clear $6.1 million and spend $4 on a lesser running back. I don't know. So D- for them. Only reason it's not an F because they were going to cut him anyways. Okay. Next. Yeah, this one, just based on the Twitter talk or the media talk, like people talk like the Jets fleeced. The rest of the kids say these days they fleeced them. Now I'm sounding old. They fleeced the Ravens. I don't see that. I don't see that here. I think this is a pretty dead even, as you can tell. Trade, I think, pretty good by both teams. It's a B for both teams. That's pretty good. There are some flaws, some negatives that aren't super major, but that keeps it from being an A for both teams. So I think this is appropriate value for Morgan Moses. If you would have told me before the trade, all right, Morgan, because I do it all the time. Who gets traded? How much are they worth? I would say Morgan Moses, probably a 5th round pick because he's got 1 year left in his deal. He's up there in age. Typically, guys play better on the offensive line, the Ravens scheme, because how fast Lamar moves. That Lamar's legs. Typically it's a little easier for them. I'd say 5th round pick. He does have experience. And then look at what the other guys are going for. Joe Mixon going for a 7th. Value down on trade, especially for expiring deals. I would have said a 5th. I think I'd be pretty accurate with that. And then this is pretty close to what that value is. I think it's better for the Ravens because you get a 6. So instead of getting a 5th, you get a 6. So a little bit lower, and you swap forward. That's a big swap. What is that, 22 picks? Big swap in a big round, early 4th round pick now. So you go up higher in the 4th, and you get a 6. I think it's better in the 5th. So I think it's appropriate value. Of course, the negative is that you do not have the right tackle that played pretty decent for you last year. You need to fill that hole on top of some other offensive line holes. I got to keep checking my phone, see if another trade happened. But Yeah, so that's kind of the negative there. You got, but I thought there was a possibility when I was sitting going through rosters and the financials when I predict a bunch of cuts and possibilities of cuts. I thought about it. I'm like, the Ravens could. I don't think it's going to happen, but they could move on from Moses because he's up there in age. They're looking to get younger, better. They don't want to have to extend him after this year. They're good at developing these guys. So there's a possibility. So he wasn't the long-term answer no matter what for the Ravens. I don't think he was going to get cut. I'm not saying he was going to get cut, but there's a possibility. Like they were 100% a possibility they're looking for the future. And he's not the future. So if you are, if he's not your future, you get some good value here. You get a 6 and you move up a lot in the 4th. So I don't, the problem is they have a lot of holes in the offensive line right now and they kind of got exposed on top of it in the Chiefs game. But overall, I think this is pretty good value for a guy that you're probably done with after this year. It's going to help you right now. You need more players. You got another pick and you moved up in the 4th. For the Jets, they filled that hole of right tackle. That's good going into the draft. You don't want to go in the draft like, oh God, we need a right and a left tackle. What do we do? I mean, some of those tackles are more, unless Joe Alt's there, Latham and Fuaga, those are right tackles. I like Fatanu a lot. He's a left tackle. Alt we like a lot. He's a left tackle, but he might be gone. Latham and Alt both could be gone or one or the other. But some of those guys are right tackles. But they fill the right tackle. They can fill the left tackle with that 10th pick in the draft. So that is good. The offensive line's kind of coming together. Yeah, and the downside is, I did think he was worth the 5th round pick in terms of my value. I think it's a little bit more than that. That's not a problem. It's a little bit more than that. But it's not like they got a steal. I think people see a pick swap and they're like, oh my God, it's a steal. Like, no, you got to look at the pick swap a little bit and what it is, where it's at, what it means. So the value's all right. I just, I think his job could be a little bit harder on the Jets than it is the Ravens. Rodgers, his best ball has came from him being able to roll out to the right and be able to sit there and make some magic happen. So a lot of pressure on Moses there at his age, where the Ravens, it's like Lamar drops back, he either goes or he's getting the ball out quick and he's just so damn fast. If he rolls out, it's just so much faster. So his job's a little bit harder, and the Jets have to make a decision. Do we extend him at his age? Do we wait and see how he is? So it could be a rental for decent value, believe it or not. So again, there's the good stuff, and then there's some stuff that keeps it from being an A. If I had to pick one, I almost might like it a little bit better for the Ravens if I had to pick, but I think it's pretty even. But that seems to be not a common take, actually, from a lot of people that I trust too. I think it's a pretty even trade. Next, we got the Diontae. We actually had this in a video already, and I kept the same grades. It was just a video about like rumors that are now old. So I thought I would throw it in here again. For the Jerry Jeudy and Mac Jones trade, those were in a video a while ago. We already graded those. I'm not going to talk about those again. But to keep this one pretty simple, Diontae Johnson to me is worth a lot more than a pick swap in a corner. The Panthers said, we're going to cut unless somebody trades for him because he hasn't been playing that great. He's not bad, but he hasn't been playing that great. And they wanted to clear that cap. So they actually clear cap. Well, first off, Diontae Johnson comes with a $10 million cap hit. That's really good. That's really good value for Diontae Johnson. That's incredible. Incredible. And they're actually not going to lose a full $10 million with this transaction because Dante Jackson has a cap hit that they're sending out. So they're actually not spending a full 10 if you look at it that way. He does need an extension, but he's worth an extension. He's worth more than $10 million for future years. But for right now, they traded for a good receiver that can play in the slot, can play outside, can help Bryce Young, can help this offense that is valued at $10 million right now. That's a steal. And you only swap picks, and you got rid of a guy that helped you clear space, and a guy that you were moving on from either way. And it's a guy that doesn't hold a whole lot of value. So A+ there. Steelers, I know there was a little frustration because some moments this year where Johnson didn't give full effort. George Pickens has had more of those circumstances. So does that mean go trade George Pickens for next to nothing? No. So if that's the reasoning, I would argue against it. Like if your reasoning this is good for the Steelers is because he was giving limited effort, well then that you would also have to think that George Pickens is worth this because you're basing it only off of effort. So that would be contradicting. It doesn't make any sense. So you wish you'd give more effort, obviously, but you definitely could have got a lot more. Steelers now need receivers. And then you could say that they're so good at drafting receivers. Like, are they? Maybe they're not anymore because different GM, Claypool didn't work out for them. They're saying that Diontae Johnson didn't work out for them. They gave up on him for next to nothing. So I don't know. So I don't like this value at all. They get us, the reason it's not an F, it would be an F. The reason it's not an F is you get a decent corner that you needed, and he's on a cheaper deal for this year, but you got to decide what you're going to do with him in the future as well. I would like them to get even better at corner, but so that was an easy one to grade A+ and D. Next, we talked about this one on Twitter as well, but I didn't talk about it in a video. I don't think I did, but making sure nothing happened again. But Brian Burns, a big one. Brian Burns goes to the Giants. Panthers get a 5th and a 2nd round pick. I thought maybe it was 2 5ths actually, but that doesn't really change my grade at all anyways. But yeah, for the Giants, they get it. I like Brian Burns a lot. I think I'm higher on him than most people. If you actually watch him, he's making more of an impact than his sacks show. He's on the brink of getting a lot more sacks. His best football is definitely ahead of him. He's already playing disruptive, good football. He's very young. I think he's ahead of schedule. I thought he was a raw prospect coming out of Florida State. So he's going to fit in with Kayvon Thibodeau. He's going to be really, really good. So I like this for the Giants. Reason A-. I mean, yeah, you had to trade. Essentially, you had to part with several things here. Draft picks, pretty good draft picks. I think he's worth more than that. Pretty good draft picks, and you had to part with a lot of money while trading for him. It's a different story. I wouldn't really say that when it's a guy that needs an extension, because they are currently under contract for this year. So I wouldn't really factor that in, but. I'm not factoring in the contract. That's graded separately. We did that on the free agency contract for Brian Burns. But when trading for a guy that needs a contract, you're trading away a lot of money, in this case, and picks. So we did factor that in a little bit, which probably bumped it down from being an A+ to an A. And then why is it at A-? Just small minor things here is the Giants still have a lot of needs. They kind of got guys that, in free agency that, maybe will start for them, but maybe are they glorified backups? And some other guys that can help them, of course. But to me, they still have a lot of needs. Still got to fix that receiver situation, and that'd probably be with the first pick, but they have to use the first pick on their first pick with that. So you are a little limited on picks with a lot of needs because you had to make a trade. So overall, it's A- A range for Brian Burns for the Giants getting Brian Burns. So overall, I do like that. D+ for the Panthers. Again, I think highly of Brian Burns. Your defense takes a hit, and his best football was coming. So why not extend him? Why not extend him right now? Value is only going to go up in the future for everybody, but for a guy that has upside, his best ball is coming. I think he got less than his appropriate value. Of course, yeah, team had to pay him a lot of money, so maybe that was the situation, but I still think it's less than his value. Here, again, defense takes a big hit. And then what almost brings them down maybe closer to the F range is, what brings it up a little bit is you clear space, $24 million. You're free to do other things. They did a lot of things, did other things. But then what brings it down, which I do not like, is that your defense takes a hit because of this, but you clear a lot of space. And they let Frankie Lavu go as well, which is their other, Brian Burns, Frankie Lavu, Derek Brown, best defensive players. Their 2 sack leaders were those 2 guys they lost. So would you clear the space to do? I know you're doing other things. They still have a lot of space. They could have got Lavu back. And I don't mind the Josie Jewell pickup, a good fit. Not Frankie Lavu, though. I know you added guards. You spent money elsewhere, but you didn't let the defense didn't need to take a hit like this. It's almost like a little, clear space so you can make it better, around where Burns would have been. And it wasn't the case. And they're trying to patch up that spot with high-end rotational pass rushers while they still have some space. I know you don't want to spend everything you have in one offseason. It's not smart, but so I don't really love that. But at the end of the day, they did need draft picks. They gained draft picks. I think they could have gained a little bit more. I give them a D+ for that one, unfortunately. I did love the Diontae Johnson one, though, for them. Next, I thought this was pretty even. The line, we grade this on Twitter, too. Here we are again. I'm keeping the grades there. The Lions and the Buccaneers, a Carlton Davis trade. Pretty solid corner. I thought he was a little better 2 years ago than he is now, but very solid corner. really good zone coverage. The Lions are trying to run more and more of and be more cover 3 on top of what they already been running cover 4, but it was like a man cover 2, cover 4 last year. So Davis should be solid for them. They badly needed a corner. $14 million per year is probably right around what he's worth, perhaps, depending on, I guess, how he plays this year. They actually gain a pick, not this year, but they actually gain a pick out of it, so that's pretty decent. You do give up a third-round pick for an expiring contract. You know, Lions typically like their draft picks. They do some damage with good draft picks like the third-round pick, so those are kind of the small negatives on there. So overall, they get better. They get a pretty solid corner here. What keeps it from being an A? Again, he took a little bit of step down this year. He's a little expensive. Not that it's overpay or anything like that. He might need a new deal. You want to see how he plays this year. You give up you don't have a third round pick now because of it. So overall good. The Lions get better. Give it a B. And for the Bucs, kind of what keeps it from being better in this is that they now need a starting corner, perhaps. Except Zion McCollum could step up in that spot opposite of Jamal Dean. But so that's kind of what the bad part. Carlton Davis, pretty good player. But expiring deal, you probably weren't signing him in the future anyways. You get a third-round pick right now, which is pretty solid. And you don't gain a pick this year. I guess that's a little negative, but you gain a third-round pick. That's pretty good. Again, he took us a little bit of step down this year, and they needed the $14 million. They actually needed that because they're paying Mike Evans, they're paying Levante David on 1 year, paying Baker Mayfield, other guys. So that definitely was pretty useful to them. So it just feels like a B. Helped both sides out for different reasons. Just felt like a straight B. And a little bit of an older trade that we didn't get to talk about, and it's actually more of a talking point right now. And I got to jump on and do the Pickett one after this as well because Pickett got traded to the Eagles while recording this, and I'm gonna end up putting it in this video. But yeah, this is a weird one, and it's even more strange now for the Bears because they signed a center in Coleman Shelton who started for the Rams. So they brought in competition for Bates. So when they traded for Bates, it was like, all right, he's probably going to be their starting center because he's got guard and center experience, but he's a backup. I thought it was weird at the time. Like, they traded a fifth-round pick for a backup, and the Bills are on a cutting spree. They traded him, and they cut Mitch Morse. If they wanted Bates to be their guy, they wouldn't have traded him. So I am very confident they were probably cutting Ryan Bates as well, and they just got a fifth-round pick for him. So that goes, I just explained why the Bills got an A+. They got an A+ for a backup that they were probably cutting. They needed to shed space pretty badly. This helped them. The big thing here is Malik Collins, very valuable, 7th-round pick he went for. Joe Mixon, 7th-round pick. Diontae Johnson went for next to nothing, too. And then the Bears are trading a 5th-round pick for Ryan Bates. Kudos to the Bills. But for that alone, it's not good for the Bears. And then you factor in the Bears are limited on picks. They're even more limited on picks now at the Keenan Allen trade. This was before, but they were already limited on picks. Why you feel like you have to trade a guy? You can get a replacement for this in the 5th round. But then you factor in they signed Coleman Shelton. Does he start at center? And then you trade a 5th-round pick for a guy that's the backup. So that it doesn't make sense. Like, the Coleman Shelton signing kind of made things kind of contradicting with this one. But why isn't it an F? I mean, you get an experienced player that I suppose is versatile. I hope for their case he starts, but if he doesn't, he's a Shelton backup and he's a Nate Davis, Tevin Jenkins. I like those guys, though. I think he's more so, Jenkins had injuries in the past. Nate Davis had some off-the-field things, at the end of the career with end of the years with the Tennessee Titans and with the Bears on and off last year. So I guess it was important to get a versatile backup that can possibly start. So that keeps it from being an F. But, I mean, guys that are way, 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 way better, more valuable are going for 7th-round picks. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So I thought this one was, I probably wouldn't have talked about this one because it's such a small one, but them signing Shelton, which I think it was yesterday, made this more of a talking point. And then them trading for Keenan Allen, very limited on picks when the Bears, when Poles' whole thing is let's build through the draft, younger, so that's it's interesting. All right, on to the one that happened while recording this video. This is an interesting one too. I originally gave the Eagles a C+, so I was giving both teams kind of a below average grade there. I ended up bumping it up to a B-. This one just happened, so I'm still thinking about it kind of. With the signing grades, it's like that. You don't really have to think about too much. Like with the trades, you got to think about it a little bit. But I ended up bumping it up because Pickett has shown some flashes. mainly in preseason last year. I'm like, this guy might be something. I don't want to base too much off preseason, but and there's been a little bit of a mess with the play calling and the offensive line, and so going and learning from Jalen Hurts, learning from the Eagles, maybe he can be something and they can flip him for a pick. But if he ends up being something, I don't know. If he gets a shot, like that's not really good news for the Eagles, though, because that would mean Hurts is hurt or he's not playing well. I doubt that's the case, but I ended up bumping it up a little bit. What I didn't like was they don't have a third-round pick anymore because you had to trade for a backup quarterback. You do not have a third-round pick. I know it's a swap. It's a swap, and they gave up 2 7s. I know it's next year, but they still gave away 3 picks, got 1 back. But you do not have a third-round pick at all. Pretty good pick because you had to trade for a backup quarterback that you really hope never plays. When you put it that way, I almost want to put it back at a C+. But still has some upside, could learn something there. You can see what he's got. You can maybe flip him for a team that's desperate at one point for something better. What do you do? His contract will be up not after this upcoming year, the year after. What do you do then? Could you get a future compensatory pick? These are so far down the line still that you don't really know. But I guess a contract extension decision is going to have to be made somewhat in the near future. So give it a B- again. It's a weird one. It's a weird one. Like they really similar situation with the Seahawks and trading for Howell. Seahawks badly needed a backup that possibly could help them in the future. Okay, the Eagles. I don't know if they really needed that, but I ended up giving it the same grade as them. It was originally going to be a C+. The Steelers. I don't like this for the Steelers. I would imagine their fans don't like it either. Because they were kind of holding out hope that Pickett could still be the guy because they weren't, Pickett was never to blame. It was always whoever the play caller was at the time, or the offensive line, mainly that because we know they had the weapons. Never Pickett's fault. And you can kind of see he has some flashes. He has some upside. It's just the play calling's got to be better. The talent's got to be better. They just got to do better. They got to give him more time to develop. And they just kind of get rid of him for, I know they gain a third-round pick here. They do swap, but a guy they just drafted in the first round, which I did not like that pick in the first round, and I got ripped for it, but I didn't like that pick, and now they got rid of him. But, what I really don't like is, they're just done with Pickett just like that, which what I could respect is not in some teams just insist, all right, he sucks right now. I don't know if Pickett really sucked, but we're going to insist on this guy being the guy because we just drafted him in the first round. So I could respect it on some levels, not that I think it's great. But they're done with him because they got Russell Wilson, and they didn't even get Mason Rudolph back. They let him go to the Titans for dirt cheap. So Russell Wilson's just the guy, and that can't be the long-term answer. So you're going to need a quarterback, and then are you ever in a position to get that quarterback? This draft class is much better than next. Are they going to make a move, for a quarterback? I don't know. I don't really get the feeling, but maybe they should. So that's a little weird, kind of giving up on a guy. Now, I was actually excited to see him in the Arthur Smith, not super excited, but Arthur Smith offense. I think Arthur Smith's very underrated. I think that was a good hire. He was really good as an offense coordinator at Tennessee. I thought he called a good offense on the Falcons. I think they would just get in position to score, and Ritter would just turn the ball over. That was the issue. People got on him because they didn't use Bijan more. Well, there was times where Algier was the hot hand. Cordell Patterson even. Bijan was fumbling a little bit. Perfect world, maybe he gets a little bit more action. But I actually like Arthur Smith. I would have liked Pickett to get. I wasn't one of those guys that were, people that were, none of it was Pickett's fault. It's all the offensive coordinator's fault. The fan base over there got a little ridiculous. I wasn't fully like that, but there is, it's part of it. It's part of it. You would like to see him in a better offense, a more, with a little more involved offense, a little bit more going on, something a little bit more that's going to fool defensive teams and defensive coordinators. So we don't get the chance at that because they got Russell Wilson and they're sold for now on him. So that's a little weird. I give it a D+. Just draft the guy in the first round. Don't gain a pick this year. You gain 2 7s next year. I don't really love that. I guess it's not the end of the world. Russ was probably starting anyways, but I don't know. A couple weird trades from the Steelers. So before I end this video, let me make sure nothing else happened. Diggs is tweeting some weird stuff. That's not really a surprise. Stephon Diggs, that is. More, L'Jarius Sneed, Hassan Reddick, more surprises are probably coming as well that we weren't expecting this. A lot of them. The Ritter, Rondale Moore trade, wasn't expecting that. So there's just a lot to talk about here. So I wanted you. We've been focusing on the signing grades. So check those out. Check out our Twitter, instant news, instant reactions. Always talking with you guys. Links pinned in the comments for that. Our sponsors, GLD Shop, Liquid IV, code GOAT for a percentage off on both those sites. That is going to do it for this one. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.